I'm going to talk about a specific topic today, but in the spirit of getting us kind of kicked off here, I thought I would work on a little ethnographic study while I explained real quickly what DORIS is. So I was going to have you all who are on the call try to participate for a minute in the chat. So if everyone knows what the chat box is, in the chat, look at this photo. And while I talk about what DORIS is, just take a look at this photo and type in maybe 1 or 2 words in the chat and tell me what this woman in this photo is doing. Just give me a 1 or 2, 3 words. Tell me what you think she's doing. So that we can kind of kick this off with a little study on what she's doing. So while you all are doing that, I'll talk about DORIS. So we were founded in 2012. We conduct workplace research. We do that to answer complex leadership problems about space. So that's generally what we're focusing on at DORIS. Something that I usually mention right away, DORIS is the name of my grandmother. It's how we named the business, but also at DORIS, we're design researchers. So DORIS stands for Design-Oriented Research for Impactful Solutions. Okay, I see you guys typing in the chat here. Awesome. So she's reading, analyzing, multitasking, stressing, concentrating, connecting. Great stuff. Okay, I'm going to flip to the next slide. Same drill. Tell me what these people are doing. I'm in that picture with my mouth kind of open awkwardly. Same idea. Type in a couple of words. What are these people doing here? So while you do that, I'll continue to talk about what DORIS is. So at DORIS, like I said, we employ qualitative and quantitative researchers. So all the researchers that work at DORIS have a master's degree in research, whether it be statistics or design research or something in either the qualitative or quantitative field. Nobody at DORIS is an architect or an interior designer. We happen to study space, but we are not architects or interior designers. We cannot do that kind of work. What we are trying to do is use research to answer questions, and we're doing that to help organizations save time and money and attract and retain talent by building the right types of spaces and understanding what their people need locally. DORIS is in 3 locations. We're in Indianapolis, Denver, Colorado, Dallas, Texas, 4 locations, and Washington, D.C. / Maryland, Virginia area. So, okay, that's a little insight into what we are. Let me see what you all are writing about. Okay, so in the next picture, I'm seeing collaborating, discussing options, connecting, brainstorming with Post-its, collaborating, sharing, exchanging knowledge, collaborating, brainstorming. Okay, interesting. So what I want you to reflect on as I move into this presentation, what my focus is today is I'm going to talk about a study that we conducted to better understand specifically collaboration right now in times of COVID. We had some other drivers we were focusing on, but what I want you to reflect on is when you looked at these 2 pictures, why did nobody write that the woman in the first picture was collaborating? Because that was not something that came up in the first, in the descriptor of the first woman, right? Nobody said she's collaborating, but she could be. She could have a screen, maybe she's got someone on the phone, right? Maybe she's using some kind of instant message. She might be talking to her colleagues, but when we look at her, we don't initially think this woman's collaborating. But this is the most natural look of, oh, these people are collaborating, right? So it's kind of an interesting quick study there to think about what we immediately think of. Okay, so I'm going to kind of tell you all a story and try to unfold it here in the next 20 minutes or so. So one of your sponsors, RJE for Cornet, actually commissioned us to do a study back in, I guess, early August. So this is Denny and my colleague, Megan Tuman. So Denny owns RJE. Megan Tuman's our Vice President of Operations at DORIS, and she's a statistician. She's very smart. So they kind of bumped into each other one day in the office, and Denny was irritated because he continued to hear people say, right now during COVID, I'm so much more productive. I'm so much more productive. And he wanted to understand, but what else is happening? Like, if they are so much more productive, there's got to be a bigger system behind this. And Megan, the statistics side of her, said, well, we can go and look for that. We can try to conduct a study to quantify what's happening with people right now during times of COVID. So their goal was stop the noise, just look at data, understand what challenges we're facing today, and maybe change the dialogue. So that's how this whole thing started. So I'm going to tell you about their project. So Megan's statistics, quantitative. This is our team at Doris. We're standing outside our office in downtown Indy. So many of these people in this picture are researchers. So Emily in the middle here teamed up with Megan, and she became the qualitative side of this study to Megan over here is quantitative side. I don't know if you can see my mouse, hopefully you can. So where do we begin the story? So as they were posed this question, are people really more productive? How can we understand what's really happening right now? They decided that there were 5 variables that they really wanted to study. So they wanted to study collaboration, creativity, innovation, strategy, and productivity. And they didn't know, they were going to study them sort of independently. They were going in to look at each of these facets and understand how are they functioning right now. So that was their goal in the beginning of this study. So again, back in August of 2020, so a little more than a month ago, or 2 months ago. So what we did to collect data on this study, so we're research nerds, we need data obviously to study something. So we went and found 16 different organizations to participate in this study. So 5 were from Indianapolis, 5 were from Louisville, 3 Cincinnati, 3 Columbus, and they were in a wide array of different types of industries. All kinds of job levels were represented: leadership, middle management, individual contributors, an excellent demographic on age. And then also the participants, it's very close to a third were office, people fully working from the office, people fully working from home, and then people in that hybrid where they might be a little bit at home, a little bit at the office. We, through this study, collected 840 unique situations where people were giving us information on how they were collaborating with their colleagues. So we had an app that they were using to collect their own individual data on. So we asked them, the participants in this study, over the course of 2 days to collect data on how they were collaborating. So we got 840 unique instances. The study took place over 6 weeks. 81 people participated. We did 77 half-hour interviews. We conducted an alignment meeting with their leadership at RJE, and we'll do a roundtable. That's not super important. So here's the most kind of simplest form of initially what the researchers found and what they started to build. So there's actually a 48-page document that goes along with this, and I've stripped out all of the words here to try to make this simple and quick today. But what they realized very quickly and obviously was that these words work very much in a system together. And so what they discovered through interviewing people and looking at how they were working were innovation and creativity sort of form this foundational base to this maybe work driver pyramid. So organizations need the fundamentals that are innovation and creativity. They need something that's somebody has to be coming up with something maybe new or something slightly different that people are going to go and pursue. From there are generative activities. This is where kind of collaboration itself sits, and then strategy sat in here with it. Remember, we were studying these 5 facets. So after there is something developed, then some people get together and collaborate and strategize on, well, what are we going to do with this thing? And then the top level of the pyramid became what they're calling the driver. And that's where productivity sat. And so productivity relies on these bottom influencers to create something so that someone has something to do. And so to even look a little deeper into this pyramid, when they were engaging people on this project and they were interviewing them and asking them about these 5 facets, these are the words. So the black or the grayish color words are what a lot of people sort of started to describe when they talked about these 5 principles or these 5 facets. So when they thought about creativity, what people described a lot of times was energy. There's energy in the room. There's energy. There's something happening. When they talked about innovation, they talked about communicating or engaging with someone. So that energy and communication are really very much needed at that base level of the pyramid. As you move a level up, collaboration requires a great deal of accessibility. We need to have access to people to collaborate. And then strategy is where the biggest levels of effort came in. What people talked about when they talked about strategy was putting effort into something. They were thinking hard, there was a lot of effort involved. And then looking at productivity, that top level was responsibility. So people love that they feel like they're being more productive right now because they have a great sense of responsibility for the things that they need to be producing. Hopefully you all are tracking with me. So I'm going to deep dive into a few of the finer points from this document. So when we look at these 5 facets that we were studying and we organize their efficacy over past, present, so maybe time of COVID, and then future, what people's outlook is. So people are generally optimistic that they think things will improve and get better. But what on this graph I think is most interesting is this, I guess it's teal. The teal line is people talking about how effective they were at collaborating before. So it's very high. They felt very good about collaboration before. Obviously, it's taken quite a nosedive. And what's interesting is that all of the other facets that we're studying, people seem to think those will get better over time, but collaboration didn't quite reach back up to where it was before. So we need to probably focus or figure out what's the barrier here? Why don't people think that we're going to be able to get back up? Or do people just feel like we've come so far down from where we were before that it's a long haul to get back to where we were? So something interesting there. I'm going to deep dive a little bit into these and then these additional 5 facets here. So very quickly, creativity. Again, they found that this had a great deal to do with energy. So when we looked at where the amount of people in a collaborative meeting and what that collaborative meeting was focused on. So was it a collaborative meeting around creativity? Was it something they were doing strategic, or was it a little bit more productive focused, like project related, task oriented, or innovation? So creativity and strategy, when they looked at and quantified their counts, the number of people in the meetings, in office meetings had far more people. So the people that were actually in an office were having bigger meetings, so more energy was going into those meetings than at home. Whereas you can see when they're doing kind of productive type work, there's more access, or there's more people in those meetings at home, which is kind of interesting. Quick look at innovation. So when we talk to people about how important innovation, so this is an importance performance graphic. How important is innovation to your organization right now? And how is it performing? So right now, everyone is underperforming, but at home, we're underperforming far more than we are in the office right now. So innovation may be suffering to some degree. And I'm moving through these quickly. So strategy efforts. The interesting finding here is that when we look at strategy and who's having strategic meetings, the place in which those are most happening is at the management level. So not some at the individual contributor level, a great deal at the leadership level, but management right now is probably working overtime, trying to strategize and figure out not only how to manage their people, but how to continue to strategize on how to manage things that they're dealing with that are maybe different at the organizational level. So if I were a leader, I would try to figure out how are my middle managers maybe doing, and how can I help them continue to be effective when they're working on strategic type efforts. And I'm going to dive here into collaboration a bit more. I think I have 3 or 4 slides on collaboration. So if we remember that a lot of people talked about collaboration requires accessibility. Something that's important to think about is impromptu versus scheduled collaboration. So when we think about impromptu collaboration in the office, this is simple. We've all been doing this for a long time, but where are these things happening? They're happening in break rooms or cafes or restrooms. Gross, but they're happening. Somebody might be stopping by an office. They're walking through the office and they see someone, or they're just, happening, they pop in a meeting room. So again, impromptu, how are they happening? This one's so important, the pre-meeting and the meeting after the meeting. In the office, these happen quite a bit. This is very hard to happen outside the office. It takes a great deal of effort. Somebody might overhear something, like these 2 kind of look like, somebody just popped over to a desk to help with a question. This 3rd bullet point, many believe impromptu collaboration doesn't happen much in the virtual environment. We've actually found, and we didn't think it did either, but what we found was that it does happen. It just looks very, very different. And so what I'm going to get into here is impromptu collaboration in the virtual world. So remember, collaboration requires accessibility to people. It doesn't necessarily mean I have to see you face to face, but I do have to have access to you somehow. So in the impromptu world, or in the virtual world, the impromptu collaborative encounters, we aren't necessarily looking at each other face to face when they're happening. we might be doing this over, these are occurring more over email or instant message or phone call. In the virtual world, if we're going to actually look at each other face to face like we are right now, those for the most part are things that are scheduled. So they're happening, the impromptu encounters are happening, but we have to, as leaders, think about that they're happening very, very differently. And so what does that mean for our business? Another finding, it's not written here, and I just wanted to mention quickly, something that we found in the impromptu virtual collaborations also is that people that are differently abled, or potentially people that speak different languages, this is becoming even more challenging at this time in the virtual world. Okay, deeper dive, collaboration as it relates to accessibility, continuing on here. A couple of important performance metrics. 3 of the 4 of these are not performing, or they're underperforming. So ability to collaborate with others. In the office, things are obviously easier when it relates to collaboration. So, but we're still right now, ability to collaborate with others is underperforming in terms of how important it is. Ability to have impromptu collaborative encounters. Actually, what's interesting is in the office, it's mapping out just fine right now based on all the folks we talked with in our study. At home, the impromptu collaborative encounters are suffering, but in the office, they appear to be working just fine. Okay, and then my last kind of deeper dive slide here on productivity. So remember, this is what people described as like, these are my responsibilities. This is my checklist that I have to get done. At home right now, this feels like it's increased, or people feel like they are more productive right now. The impromptu collaborations that we just saw in the last slide that happened in the office, people feel like those are counterintuitive to them being productive. So some people very much like their availability is limited. These are just pull quotes from what people said, but it's changed the way I work. I don't commute, I have more time to sleep. So people are really thinking about what they like about being at home. I work on more issues now. I do more throughout the day. There's less travel. So this person is really thinking about like the logistics of productivity. And then when I'm in the office, we have constant interruptions. You guys all, I'm sure, can relate to this. People are popping in, showing up. That's limited now, right? So you're less accessible. Therefore, you're probably collaborating less, but you might be getting more done on your to-do list. Okay, so in my last few minutes here, I wanted to go into sort of a so what, just like what should we do with all this information? So we're going to look at a couple of scenarios, and it's just things that if I were, well, I'm a business leader. As a business leader, these are things that I would be thinking about or want to continue to think about as I think about where my people might be working. So looking at these scenarios, we're going to assume a few things. Like we're going to assume we're somewhat post-COVID, or we're not completely in this world where there's restrictions on what we might be able to do. It's a healthy culture. We're assuming that inside the organizations we're running these scenarios, there's somewhat of a healthy culture. These are oversimplified examples, but I'm doing this to try to get us to think a little bit. And each organization will need to figure out, obviously, what works for them. But these are just things that we're going to just take a peek at real quick here. Okay, so scenario 1, let's say everyone in this particular organization is coming into the office. So this graph took me a while when the researchers that did this project were showing me this. It took me a minute to think about what they were trying to get across here. But what they're saying is these bars essentially are trying to illustrate the sort of the barriers that are cleared when a group of people are working in a specific way. So when a bar doesn't reach all the way up to the top of that graph that has no numbers, it's just very, it's just meant to be thought-provoking. But when the bar doesn't reach all the way up to the top, if your organization needs it to get all the way up to the top, the gap that it's going to take is the effort that you're going to have to put in to get there. So in this example, office only scenario, the environment is going to allow folks to be more creative in a much easier way. So to reach all the way to the top, they don't have to put as much effort in. A little more to be innovative. Collaboration happens very naturally here. So they're going to be able to do just fine in this particular scenario in an office. Where they're going to have to focus a lot of energy on is this productivity area, right? So to be effective here, this organization needs to focus and figure out how are we going to enable people to be more productive when they're in the office, right? In scenario 2, home only, people are, let's say in this scenario, productivity is not a problem. That comes natural, but as business leaders, where we're going to really have to focus is putting more effort into creativity, or maybe putting more effort into our strategic efforts. So we're going to have to look at those things and strategize and come up with how are we going to enable our people to do these types of things better, faster, stronger. And then the last scenario, which I found this very interesting, the researchers indicated that the hybrid model, so, and a lot of people are doing this, somebody just talked about they had to go in the office. A lot of people are doing this right now, and we're doing this at DORIS. This is where we work a little bit from home, a little bit in the office. This model actually is the hardest model to execute. It takes the most effort and energy to do well. So the reason that is because people need to put more effort and energy into figuring out where their colleagues are. So when they're either all in the office or they're all at home, we kind of understand the rules of engagement. But when some of us are at home or some of us are in the office, we have to figure out first where they are and then how we're going to engage. So creativity becomes a lot harder when 2 of us are in the office, 3 of us are at home, we have a meeting after the meeting, but we don't call the people at home. Like there's a lot more effort that really has to go in to making this work well. The strongest component here is productivity. People still could choose where to be and when to be accessible, but some of these other elements they find are greatly suffering in the hybrid model. So the hybrid model is not all bad. It's great if you're an organization that can figure out how to put the right effort into the right things that you need at the right times. It's also great for morale and culture. People love the agency to choose where they're working and when they might be at what places, but it does put stress on the rest of their fellow colleagues when they're trying to figure out. So if you need to have a very strong system of understanding where people are and how you're going to execute certain things. So I think that was my quick run through of that study. Again, it's much deeper. And obviously kind of our outcome is it's a complex system. You have to kind of choose your own adventure and figure out how you as an organization are going to work into this system and how you're going to choose where your people might work based on what you need. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and Heidi, open it up, I suppose, to questions.
Yes, does anyone have any questions?
Hey, Sam, this is Gary Hutchins. I do. This very enlightening information. Question, how have you guys thought about, we have a bunch of people, individual desires, some want to go back to the office, some want to stay home. I think whether people are made to or it's a matter of choice can affect those factors very much so. Have you guys had an opportunity to look at how the impacts of choices are going to have on those success factors?
Yeah, so it's challenging right now in the time of COVID. We're just talking about this right now, like the tail is kind of wagging the dog to some degree. Like all the, our choices were kind of made for us back in late March, early April. And now organizations, probably the real estate teams are trying to decide if they can take back control and figure out what are we going to do here. And so we've seen through our client work multiple scenarios on this, and it depends on what is important to the organization. So we've got a group that we're working with that is highly creative service organization, and they've been trying voluntary hybrid model for a number of months, and they this week went back full-time mandatory in the office. And it's not that they haven't had a few road bumps along the way, especially even this week as we're watching them go through this, but their readiness of their employees to come back is a lot higher because their employees understand and their leadership team has been communicating, why do we need you back in the office? Because of these things, we're suffering as a business in this way. We need you back. We have another client who's the exact opposite. They're keeping their people home, all remote, and their people, in terms of when we look at testing for them, in terms of their readiness to come back, is very, very low. But their leadership is sending a message that we don't want you back in the office. And the reason is because we want to get you all to strengthen your remote working skills so that we can open our talent pool up to a wider geographic location. And so they're explaining their drivers to their people, and that's it's really relaying over to their people's readiness to come back to the office. So you'd have a lot of one-offs and individuals within organizations who want to do something different. But what we found is leadership really needs to set the tone and communicate what they want. And it gets very confusing for individuals if what leadership says you're supposed to be doing, but what they really want is something different and they're back channeling it. That's when there's a lot of problems inside organizations that we're working with. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I believe so. I think it's just difficult. If I'm a high collaborator because I work from home because I enjoy it so much, the day I'm made to go to the office, my collaboration could suffer because I don't want to be at the office. It's just kind of my simple formula. That's all. Yeah,
it might. And you might decide, you know, that person, and we've seen this with clients, there are people that aren't going to fit this. The model has changed since COVID. That person might not work there anymore, you know, or eventually they'll get weeded out. And so things are going to have to shift and change.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Sam, I have a question.
Yeah.
In your research, in your analysis, did you differentiate between what I'll call, you know, adapters to a mobile or a work at home environment pre-pandemic, vice folks that were forced very quickly and with very little training or assimilation into that model?
That's a really good question. I wish I knew the answer. I've seen their research protocol. I don't know that they asked if, they might have asked that. I don't know. I could take it down and get back to you if you shoot me your email address. I don't know how much they know about the stakeholders, if they were successfully able to remote work prior or not. Now, some of their people in the study weren't remote working at all. They were full office working, right? But I don't know what the skill sets of their other, let's say 2/3 of their stakeholders. I don't know if they had strengths in those areas to begin with or not.
Okay, thanks.
I'm sorry, I have another question. Are the slides going to be available to us? Heidi, maybe that's a question for you, or is it something that can't be shared?
It's up to Sam. If she wants to share them, she can send them to me and I'll make sure everybody gets them for sure.
I would take out the company's name in the beginning and stuff. That's not what I'm looking for. It's mainly those scenario slides that I found very interesting.
Yeah, I'll work with, we were commissioned obviously to do this study. So I'll work with, RJE commissioned us. So I'll work with RJE and Heidi and figure out what I can give to you guys.
Sure. Any more questions? We are right at the 9:30 mark. We can go a few more minutes if there's questions for sure. We don't like to cut off the discussion. All right, well, hearing none, thank you very much, Sam. We appreciate your taking the time this morning and great information. And don't forget that we have these coffee chats the second Wednesday of every month. We will soon be announcing November's topic. They're at 9 a.m. So watch your email because now you're on the list. So thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you, Sam.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.